Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about telemental health, online counseling, online therapy. It comes in many different names, but it has one singular goal, which is to support those in need. And today I'm going to be moderating. My name is Dr. Ankesana Minbal. I'm a clinical psychologist and founder of Being Integrative Clinical Solutions, a small community-based clinic in the Bay Area. And today we're going to be joined by Hasu Jo, a licensed marriage family therapist, and she is the clinical support lead for BetterHelp. And she has, for the last 3 years, had direct firsthand knowledge of how efficacious online counseling can be for everyone. And she is really enjoying being able to support individuals coming onto online mental health forums and support for therapy. We will also be joined shortly by Dr. Chandler Chang. It seems right now we have some technical issues with getting her on, but she will definitely try and get on and join us for our conversation. And with that, we will jump right in and start with some questions. Hello, Hasu.
Hi, thanks so much for that wonderful introduction.
No problem. So I'd like to start with a couple of questions. The first one being with your experience being a clinical support lead with BetterHelp. I'm just wondering, what are some of the common questions that you receive from people about telemental health?
Sure. I get a lot of questions from folks I went to grad school with and other therapists I still keep in touch with. And of course, people that are interested in applying to join our platform or just interested in general in moving towards this teletherapy direction, and they haven't had much experience with that. So some of the common questions I definitely get are around how a clinician can effectively manage boundaries when a lot of the technology platforms that are available for online counseling now, it kind of markets itself as a counselor in your pocket. So there are a lot of questions about how to manage boundaries. I do get questions from traditional practitioners about how to effectively provide good therapy when you're not in the same room as someone. So that's a pretty common question too. I get tons of questions about licensing requirements, regulations, practicing across state lines. What does this look like if the technology exists? Is my state board doing anything to address this growing need and demand for teletherapy? So I get a lot of questions like that. And another question that's pretty common is people just asking what kind of situations in which online counseling may not be the best option for a client or even a counselor that is interested in doing it.
I think I'm just kind of curious about how things have changed with COVID-19. I'm wondering if you've seen an influx in these types of questions. And also, just to second to your response, what types of concerns might you speak to in terms of appropriate boundaries or inappropriate boundaries in this setting?
A couple things there. So I guess with the current situation, with everything going on, we're definitely seeing a huge increase in clients signing up for these services. And I think there's a lot of things at play here, but of course, a lot of folks are now unable to find in-person services. It's just not a realistic option for most people right now. We're also seeing a lot more counselors and therapists, clinicians, whatever you want to call us, applying to join our platform. And I do think that part of it is coming from people being out of work, no longer able to go into their offices. Clinics are closed, agencies are furloughing people. So I'm seeing an increase in activity on our platform overall with the situation there. When moving on to that next question about what situations in which it might not be super appropriate for a client or counselor to be on the platform. There's a lot of stuff that one may consider, and even some of the things that a lot of therapists have said that they don't feel is appropriate for the online setting. I've seen other clinicians step forward and be able to manage these things with their clients online. So everything I say right now, like most things in life, there's going to be exceptions and outliers and things that don't fit into a generalized statement. But typically, if someone is presenting themselves to be in a current crisis and they are reporting something that would lead you to believe that they are in imminent danger to themselves or to other people, this might not be the best format for them. at least where I'm coming from at BetterHelp, it's not a crisis service. So your counselor is really not in your pocket 24/7. Your therapist is a person that sleeps, eats, has other professional responsibilities, and may not be glued to their phone or computer, believe it or not. So somebody that needs that level of support in terms of 24/7 care, if you're experiencing things that somebody may assess is appropriate for an inpatient option, for example, you probably don't want to try to go online. Other things that have come up, those that are experiencing different forms of disordered eating. So specifically with anorexia, I think it's really important for there to be a coordinated care team, a physician involved, a nutritionist, maybe like somebody that's there to help monitor the physiological effects of what's going on for the client themselves. It's also, I think, I'm seeing an increase in clients signing up, self-reporting that they believe they have dissociative identity disorder. And I have counselors handling this in their own ways on the platform, but I do think in general, it's going to be a little bit difficult, especially if your client is reporting to be going into alters while they're talking to you. It might be difficult to assess for something like that and do things like reality testing. So any kind of situation in which you might feel like it's important for there to be an in-person evaluation, assessment, something like this, the online platform is not going to replace those services.
Well, I thank you for speaking to the different types of populations that you're getting, because I imagine a lot of clinicians are curious what type of client is going to be on the other end of the platform, or who is seeking services right now. And it sounds like there is a wide variety of clients who are signing up and looking for therapy as an option right now.
Yes. Previously, I worked in community mental health. I've worked for public sector social services, and the kinds of clients that we see on the online platforms is everyone that you've ever met in community mental health plus more, because one of the missions behind online therapy is to provide access and try to eliminate or at least reduce some of the barriers that exist for a lot of people. And at the end of the day, therapy is available to those of privilege or those that have subsidized care, but there's tons of populations that are marginalized and unable to access a licensed professional. So I think because we're trying to create that access, we're going to get a lot more people signing up that normally would never set foot into a therapist's office or to a hospital, clinic, anything like that. So we see everything for a dull day. And I think a lot of therapists might report in some fashion or another, like, I've seen it all, I've heard it all, but come to online counseling and you'll see and hear even more.
Well, I'm glad that you speak to that and talking about access. And so I kind of want to explore that a little bit more in terms of access to care, and also what are some of the challenges with using telemental health as an option for therapy?
Sure. So challenges, I think it's difficult as it is to build a relationship and, create rapport, as we all like to say, with someone that comes into your office. That's hard enough as it is. And now put, miles between. You may not even know all the time exactly where your therapist is located, whether that's an office or their home. And you also have, even though we can see each other face to face, there's this level of anonymity that exists because we're not in front of each other, because we cannot touch each other. Of course, that's not something that happens in therapy anyway, but removing these things that happen between people and the dynamic that exists when you're sitting face to face with someone, makes things a little bit different and challenging in that way. I think what I'm seeing a lot in terms of conversations being brought up by actual practitioners now is, now sometimes a lot of licenses are requiring that you verify the identity of the person that you're talking to, because of course we're going to think of confidentiality as sacred in our space in the worlds that we work in. And that becomes a little bit more challenging and could pose some difficulties if you're not always 100% certain that the person sending you a message is your client. So those things have come up. Of course, technical difficulties is a huge challenge. Beyond it being like a practical disruption and interruption to the hour that you have with your client, it is very disruptive when you're sitting with someone that's discussing something that's really hard for them, and then the video keeps glitching out, or you have to ask them to repeat themselves a little bit more than you would in your office. I think we've all experienced this cadence of communication of our clients kind of shutting down, getting really quiet, mumbling even. And it's not always super helpful for them to only keep hearing their therapist say, like, can you repeat yourself? Can you say that again? So these are some, I think, unique challenges that exist in the online world.
Well, and given that, COVID-19 has resigned many of us to be home and working remotely and working on a digital platform, how do you prepare your clients for some of the challenges that might come up in a session?
Well, at least I'll start with the easy stuff, which is the tech stuff, right? It's just trying to create as much preparedness for the client as much as possible. So letting them know, like, it's a lot better if you're able to use a laptop. If it's even better if you can wire into your internet instead of using Wi-Fi. Earbuds can help, because if you're trying to use the speaker on your device, there might be a lot of reverb, like stuff that just feels disruptive. In terms of preparedness for the current situation and this prolonged isolation that a lot of us are finding ourselves in, I think it was kind of spoken on the first panel, but continuing to nurture some sense of community, I think that may have been brought up. Doing things every day that still contribute to one's, I think, meaning in life, finding and creating value and meaning in the things that you do each day and how you spend your waking hours. And, I think also just normalizing, which is therapy 101, but letting your clients know that it's okay to kind of freak out right now. It's okay to have these feelings. And on top of all the feelings we have of being anxious, not being sure if we could get toilet paper or not, it doesn't help to add this shame and guilt on top of it for feeling like you're going crazy, because you're not. We're all in this together. And I think that's actually been a huge coping mechanism for me, is knowing that a lot of people are out there in their homes feeling a little bit out of it and unsure of where to go for support. I think there's a huge rise right now in people connecting over video chat with friends that they haven't talked to in a really long time. I see a lot of technology platforms creating online games that are available for a group setting. One of my yoga teachers is doing something incredible, and she's doing Zoom classes on a very regular basis and maintaining the sense of community that we have for our class. So I think there's like tons of things that we can do to prevent this social hermitness that is definitely a risk of happening. I think we all know that prolonged isolation is not good if you already have symptoms of depression. And so there's a lot of things to be said when it comes to behavioral activation. You don't have to do nothing just because it's helpful for our global community for you to stay home.
Thank you for speaking to that. And I'm just thinking about several different points that you've made, especially it's really important to be connected. And I know that clients are seeking connection, and with their access to care, I'm curious, do you see that clients are looking for increased sessions, or are most folks typically sticking with the 1 week session model?
Yeah, so this is a strange area, right? Because especially for large platforms, I'm from BetterHelp, which is the biggest one, and then there's other large platforms too. Oh, hello.
Oh, we have Dr. Chang. Thanks so much. We've got it figured out, so she's joining us now.
Great.
And thank you, Hasu, if you don't mind continuing.
Sure, I'll go ahead and answer that. I do think because we also are creating so much access to a lot of people that don't really know what therapy is, we have a lot of people signing up that their only idea of therapy comes from movies, comes from TVs, and those settings don't even really explain how often these people are coming to the therapist's office. And then those that are used to the traditional model, they're thinking, a rigid once a week, little to no contact with my therapist in between, discouraged even. So the cadence of communication does feel and look very different in the online setting and in teletherapy in general, because technically your client can hit you up anytime, right? And so it's very much on the counselor now to establish and hold boundaries. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to model it yourself. If you tell your clients that you don't respond at 3 a.m., do not respond at 3 a.m. It's really easy to set a precedent for your clients online. I do think a lot of folks sign up thinking that they're going to be able to speak with their counselor an hour a day, every single day. So it's really important for those of us that are practicing online to establish really healthy boundaries, providing psychoeducation around the clinical appropriateness of frequency of contact, and even letting clients know if you are in a place where we both together decide that you do need to see someone really intensively and frequently during the week, the online platform might not be the best option for you, which is really hard, a very hard conversation to have with clients right now. That means for a lot of people, they may have no other option for the next couple of months or however long this situation is going to be.
So it sounds like, and I appreciate you bringing that point back to boundaries, and it sounds like really starting up front, being very communicative about what the limits are, what you can and can't do, and who is appropriate for the services that is being offered. And you also spoke to BetterHelp being one of the larger platforms. So I'm going to jump down to Dr. Chang and give you a bit of a break. And Dr. Chang, I'm wondering if you could speak to a few platforms. Are there particular platforms that you recommend and why?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad to be here. Apologies for the technical problems. But I also just wanted to clarify, I think BetterHelp offers a certain kind of service. And I come from a more traditional world of once a week. Unless a client's needs are different from that, but I do come from a more structured weekly approach. And so I also think that teletherapy is something that you can translate even within that model to create effects and great benefits from our clients. So it's interesting to hear about all different kinds of models, and I think it works for those of us from the more traditional world as well. I have used, in the past, I've used VC, and I currently use Simple Practice, which is also the platform that I use for scheduling and billing. So it's really great. It's really all integrated. And what I love about it is that when my clients get reminders about the sessions, they also get the link to use for the video teletherapy experience. So it's very easy. And but there are a lot out there. I'll just add one caveat that I think just making sure it's HIPAA compliant and secure is really the least that we can do for our clients and really important also.
Wow, great. Did you have a preference? I know you mentioned VC and you're using Simple Practice. Are there any other, platforms that you would recommend for someone who is just starting or getting used to being online versus others?
That's a great question because I have a large private practice. So I have a tool to for me, Simple Practice works best. But if you're just starting, I believe that VC, many of them have a free version and it's HIPAA compliant. And so I think checking out VC is great. I think unfortunately people are like, oh, Zoom is easy or FaceTime, but I think it's important to look through the privacy issues and security on that. And I know that there's a law talk coming up next. So.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of information too. The counties and the states are kind of relaxing certain HIPAA compliances. So I'm curious to see what they have to say about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about what considerations that you might have when providing online mental health sessions. Are there particular items that you would or wouldn't wear or certain backgrounds? I know I tend to move around and use my hands when I talk all the time. So what might you say to someone who's starting out and thinking about being online and being an online therapy presence?
I think that's a great question, and we can kind of go superficial here for a minute because I think these things matter. I think design matters, and that's why I'm actually on a laptop that was from my closet right now because I had some tech issues, so this is not ideal. But I think two things. I think thinking about the client's comfort and security. So what do they want to see? I really like to have a background that's closer to me rather than a large room behind me. Thinking about the outside noise and the security for the client. But then I also want to highlight therapists self-care can be a big part of what you do to prepare for your teletherapy day. I really think, like I was thinking the other day, I feel like I'm getting on an airplane. I've got my water, my beverages, my snacks, because we're sitting here for 6 to 8 hours. And I think if we're comfortable and really ready to engage with the camera and our clients, I think that makes a difference. And so, yeah, I think it's a good question.
Well, I'm curious if you both could speak to that piece of you're going to be sitting in this space for a number of hours seeing clients, sometimes back to back. And what things do you do to prepare yourself so that you can be refreshed for each client on screen? And
I never know who wants to go first.
I walk my dog quickly. I have a I tend to think this is very head work, very cerebral work and feeling work. And I balance that out with like music and movement and being outside my house, things like that. I don't know.
How about for you, Lucy?
So I don't actually have that many clients. I always keep a pretty small caseload, and those are for a variety of reasons. I want to keep practicing, obviously, but also I want to stay on top of feature changes, updates that are made to our platform. So most of my day is spent at the computer. So I think it does speak to that anyway. And most of my time is spent supporting other clinicians. So I am talking to people all day. It's just not necessarily clients, but speaking for a lot of the therapists that are on our platform that are having sessions back to back while now in their home and not so much in their office space. I think physical movement is definitely important. How are you going to move your body between sessions and make sure you're not getting so stuck in the same position? When I do have my clients back to back, it is important for me to make sure that I'm leaving some time in between for the event that I'm very parched and I need to get a beverage, or I need to use the restroom, or just all the little life things that may come up, like something's wrong with my camera, so I need to do something with that before the next session. So just making sure that I'm not trying to go from 2:59 at a session to a 3 p.m. session, and just being really on top of watching the time. It's been an interesting experience for me that some of my online sessions seem to go a lot faster than when I'm sitting somewhere with in a room with somebody. I'm not quite sure where the perception of that is, but hopefully that answers some of the question.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job. Just speaking to the fact that we are the tool. So being able to refresh ourselves, let alone refresh our computers, so that we can be on. So I know that in the interest of time, we'll be running out of time pretty soon. I just wanted to, speak to to think about the felt sense of the individual in the room, and how do we know we're conducting effective therapy and connecting with clients through a digital device? Could you, Jesus, start with that, and we'll wrap it up with Dr. Chang?
Sure. So in our online space, we're incredibly data-driven and measure metrics through a lot of different ways, including client behavior. So at the end of the day, BetterHelp is a technology platform connecting licensed professionals and their clients. So we have data analysts on our team that are constantly looking at user behavior. And that's what they say for the way that our clients behave, right? And ways that we know that this is providing an effective service on that macro level is clients continue booking sessions. They keep coming back, that we allow them to fill out optional satisfaction surveys about the counselor. These are anonymized, so this gives us a way to see into the client experience through self-report. And then when you're the clinician with your client, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different, because if you're not in video, even on the phone, it's sometimes hard to capture like changes in the rate of someone's breathing, or shifts in their because they're uncomfortable with something, or even, the increase of swallowing their spit because they're nervous. And these kinds of things can get missed. But I do think that it creates different kind of windows of communication between you and your clients, needing to often check in with them about how they're feeling. Even in these moments of silence, it can feel very different from when you are sitting next to them.
Sure. And I'm curious with Dr. Chang, since you provide a different type of therapy, which is more traditional in the sense of like the, in the room, I'm wondering if you could speak to that as well, that question.
Definitely. We are also really interested in data. It's more between the therapist and the client directly, but I hear what you're saying at BetterHelp. It's really interesting to think about in that technology space. This is, it's traditional in the sense that it's still just between the therapist and the client, but we love to use data and love to have apps that are shared between the client or the user and the therapist so that you can talk about it together. We're actually right now looking for an app that really visually displays this well so that it can be shared over the internet. And secondly, I think you're so right here about like the little things in the room, like the bodily things. Like I've noticed with clients, they'll look away, and I don't know if it's a withdrawal or if it's tearing. So, for example, if you're starting to tear, you're not going to want to look at a laptop camera. You are going to look away, kind of take a pause. So I find myself asking more, like, what's happening? What am I not seeing? So that it becomes a little bit more verbal, I think, just checking in and not making assumptions about what's happening.
I think that's really, really helpful. I know that many clinicians are taught to go with their gut, but in having to be so forward, we are asking direct questions. And I kind of want to go back really briefly to something that Jesus spoke to before you came on, Dr. Chang, and that was the types of clients that we see in our practices in the news and the online forum. So with some of the clients that might go to BetterHelp, they may not be a good fit for more intensive therapy. Could you speak to how you would approach working with clients who might need more intensive support?
Yeah, I think, and generally speaking, in times not in COVID times, if somebody is at a higher level of, possibility of self-harm or danger of any kind, then you would be quick to say, oh, there's a milieu that might better serve you. However, in this time, it's kind of interesting because teletherapy, in some ways, if we balance out somebody's physical well-being with what's happening mentally, it's a little bit of a special time, and it's sort of like a moment where we're going to have to see how this works using these things. But but generally speaking, there are inpatient hospitals, intensive outpatient programs. Those milieux are still happening right now, even though we're in this pandemic. So I think if somebody needs a higher level of care, it's really important to keep that in mind.
So one last question, just curious, if there's any advice that you would like to give to someone who's starting out doing online therapy for the very first time. Dr. Chang, would you like to start with that question?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I think I had a couple of therapists who had to start using it during this moment. And once they tried it, they were like, oh, this is so cool. It's just another option. It's just another way to connect with clients. It's sort of like the first time you used an Uber app. Like, I don't want someone to pick me up and take me out to eat. But then once you use it, it's fine. It's great. It's really interesting.
How about for you, Jesus?
I think if you are first starting out, it's really important to research all the options that exist out there to see what you're going to be most comfortable working with, because if you're not comfortable, it's going to bleed out in your sessions with your clients. So I say this because as much as I love where I work, I know that it's not the best option because it doesn't meet the expectations or the preference choices of every person out there. So I think it's really important to research your options, because there are so many platforms now that also exist that allow you to connect with clients, and you don't need this company behind you. You can do it independently and on your own. So if that's something that feels better for you, go for that. And other things, it's like there are now training, seminars, webinars, all these things that exist for folks that are interested in moving into the online counseling space, because I think that there are a lot of clinical considerations that don't come up in regular training, and working through all the things that could happen online. What other advice? I think being open-minded is super important. I think in our field, there is a lot of resistance and pushback to big changes like this that disrupt what we're very much used to in the traditional world. But I'd also like to say that, therapy and this world of mental health itself, this field is in the grand scheme of things, very new. And when the founding fathers of what we do were coming up, I'm sure that they faced a lot of resistance and challenge too. And I also don't want to have backlash towards those that are skeptical of it, because I imagine all of us are coming from the space of wanting to make sure that our patients, that our clients are getting the best and safest care possible. So open-mindedness is really good to have in such a strange and different setting. And we are in a strange and different time. So I think it's good to consider all these different ways that we can connect with our clients.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you both for joining today and speaking to this very, very informative and ever-changing topic, because we're in it. And then also, I just want to share with our viewers that there is a supplemental video by Michi Fu, which can also be found in the chat. So there's always more information. And if you are looking for more information or resources, TogetherWell has put together a resource list and is available through our chat. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe and have a great afternoon. Bye.
Bye. Take care.